Oh, no, let's not do that. Let's go this one.
I'm gonna go in. I run it up in the right kind of what? Nigga, shit so fucking hard, hey. What? Side to side, I've been serving and the fag, I've been serving and the fab out the pen. Now we need to work around the platform, and chirp around the cloud, never serving and the spell, trying to pen. I love my new.
This live stream may contain content that could be perceived as shocking or offensive, but it is presented solely for educational purposes. Viewer discretion is advised. We strive to adhere to community guidelines, and any potentially sensitive material is shared with the intent of fostering understanding and learning.
Yo, what's going on, guys? I want to welcome to Sunday Night Live. I got a special co-host with me today, the one, the only, the chief of police, Diesel TV is in the house. What's up, big dog?
What it is. How y'all doing, man? How's everybody doing out there in YouTube land?
Man, I wanted to get a cigar today so I could light one up with you, but you know the weather's been so bad I can't get out of my house.
Hey, listen, I got him on deck. You was here. You just getting that refrigerator right behind me, and they in there.
Your humidor, is it full of all cigars, or you got like a special brand that you like?
Yeah, those two that you see behind me right here, those two lighting up right there, those are my two humidors. So
okay,
they're full of cigars.
Nice. I love it. Well, listen, I am so happy that you're here today. I'm really excited to get your opinion on things. We got a couple of different things we're going to talk about today. Hang on a second here. I need to pull up one more thing here. Hang on. It's going to be coming from the computer. A live stream PDF. There we go. I apologize, guys, for being a little bit late. I'm doing my homework, and I had like 4 papers I had to write. I was in the middle of a test right when my countdown was going off. It was like, yo, you're supposed to be live right now. I'm like, shit, I'm doing it. Eric Morris, what's up, man? Atypical Diesel. This Sunday night live stream is going to be lit. You already know, fam. You already know. Deputy on post will be listening. Absolutely. So, guys, listen, today we're going to be talking about a couple of different topics. The first topic that we're going to be hitting is finding your niche in security. I put up a post in my community tab, Diesel, the other day where I was asking people, I said, a lot of people don't like what they're doing in security. And I know this is not just security. You probably see this in the law enforcement field. People see this in every aspect of work. But I said, if you are happy with what you're doing, what is it about your location that you like? I had a really rough week this past week, had some administrative stuff that I wasn't happy about. Nothing too major, it's just little stuff. And one thing I will say, big bro, I can tell that I've matured and grown because in my 20s and 30s, small administrative things, and you know what I'm talking about, like stuff where people that are above you say, hey, look, I know you don't agree with this, but this is what you got to do. Right.
Right.
One of my downfalls as a man, one of my downfalls as an employee, as a worker, has always been that I've never jived well with that. I'm a right fighter. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
You fight for the principle at the behest of all the things that you lose trying to prove your point.
Right.
But you know what I mean? It was like a situation that came up, and I thought to myself, at the end of the day, this is not worth ruining a relationship or ruining a work relationship over being, disjointed about something. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
You're totally right, man. Because this is the thing about it, man. A lot of people don't realize, but everybody's got a boss, and it's coming from somewhere, right? With me going from being a regular officer to where I'm at now, I totally understand where you're coming from, bro. But I totally understand being on the other side too. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I'll do some administrative changes on some certain things, and it just, for one, it might be just to make my job easier.
Yeah.
Because I have to be in charge of, the whole department. So I need this to be a lot easier for me, even though it may make it a little bit harder for you.
Yeah.
But it makes it a lot easier for me, and I'm doing it for 30-some officers instead of just you're doing it for you. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a little bit different when it comes down to administrative stuff. People have to realize, especially when it comes from a sergeant, because when I tell my sergeants to do something and make sure their guys are doing it, and they go to their guys and doing it, My sergeants are not to say this is what the chief says.
Right.
This is what we're doing. Period.
Right.
Point blank. You know what I'm saying? So it's not. I get it. But sometimes we just have to realize it's coming from somewhere, and everybody's got a boss. You know what I'm saying? Because I got a boss too. My town manager and my mayor. They're on me all the time about stuff they would like to see changes on. So, and
to understand that it's a cycle. We get into this position where we tend to look at things from the place that we are. And, every person that is a rank and file officer, whether that's in the military, law enforcement, security, basic business, you won't always be in that position. And at some point in time, you're going to be in a position of management, position of leadership. And so you have to make sure that you're putting pennies in the jar and not always taking pennies out of the jar, because at some point in time, when you're in charge, you're going to need people to toe the line. And a lot of times as a supervisor, you're asking people to do things that you don't necessarily agree with either. Right. But at the end of the day, business is business, especially in private security. Business is business. You know what I mean? And that is the bottom line. And everybody's contract is riding on people making the right decisions for the business. So that was a moment that I looked at and I thought I had some really good growth because that's not normally how I would have handled things in the past. But that made me think, I have found a niche in my market of private security. I really enjoy where I'm at. I've had 2 offers since the last time that I talked to you to join police departments. One was the Portland State University, but at the time, Portland State University, they had their officers working unarmed. And I just,
police officers?
Yes.
Oh no. What?
Yeah. Portland, right? I mean, you're aware of
Portland. I know Portland, but I never would have thought I'd know what?
So what happened, I'm going to say it was in 2020, maybe 2021. There was a situation where and this is all to the best of my knowledge. Okay. Don't quote me. From what I was told, there was a fight on campus. 2 people got into it. A young man either pulled a firearm or a firearm dropped out of his coat as the police officers were responding. They gave him commands to not reach for the firearm. And as the people who support his actions say that he inadvertently reached for the firearm as it fell. And
I don't care if it was inadvertent or I don't care if it was on purpose or not, brother. You did exactly what I told you not to do.
100%. So he was shot, and that led to, mass uprisings. You know how it is here in Portland. So long story short, the vast majority of the people that were working in that department, they quit, rightfully so. And so, I was put in a position where I went, I interviewed. The chief of police was a great guy, and he was doing the best that he could with the situation. But I couldn't bring myself to being in a situation where I was working unarmed. Now, fast forward to 2023, and they got their firearms back. So, it could have been a potentially good move for me, but I didn't take that. And then the last one was the Port of Portland, which is the Air Force or the airport police that works with the Transient Authority. Mm-hmm. And the issue that I had there was they wanted me to declare all my tattoos. So I have over 30 tattoos. Mm-hmm. They wanted me to individually take pictures of every tattoo and declare what they were. And I'm almost 50 years old, and that kind of stuff just bothers me. I know it's part of the protocol, but
you have to kind of to make sure they're not gang affiliated or biker affiliated or anything like that. That's the main reason why we do that. So I have to do that for everybody that applies with me also. If they have tattoos, they have to declare them.
But it started to, dawn on me that I really enjoy my location. I work, oddly enough, at a grocery store primarily.
Those are fun ones, man.
We service about 16 locations in the greater Portland area. And depending on which area of town they're in, you have different issues. Like you can work at our Gateway location, which is on the southeast side. It's not a joke over there. These are your organized crime, your gangs, your petty criminals. These are people that are doing a lot of dirt. You have a lot of shootings, a lot of homicides in that area. Where I'm at, it's primarily the Old Town district, which is where all the homeless people are. So I deal with mental health. I deal with, drug addiction. I deal with just schizophrenia. We laugh. I cannot tell you how much we laugh at work. Our job is just so crazy, the things that we see. And I don't say that to be mean to the people that are dealing with those situations, but I can't even show half of the things that I have on tape or video that happened at that location. It's just so crazy, but
yeah, buddy,
it's so much. I'm gonna tell you, man, it's so much fun. So like, I make good money. I have a good group of people that I work with. I have a community that respects me, looks up to me. The people that are in that neighborhood, they know me, and then every day, you can be dealing with something from a homicide to a naked person running through the store, dealing with people that are overdosing, people that are just like saying the most outlandish stuff, being schizophrenic. It's crazy. So my question to you was like, as a police officer, how did you, or did you, at what point did you find your niche where you're like, this size department, this location, this avenue of work is what I want to do? Because I'm assuming that you had the opportunity to go to big cities or work in small cities. Like, how did you find your niche?
I really didn't. I really didn't look at what size department I wanted to be in. When I can remember when I wanted to be a police officer, there were two things that I know I wanted to do when I went to be a police officer. One, I wanted to ride a motorcycle because I love chips. And then the other one was I wanted to be able to wear street clothes to work and be a police, right?
All right.
And I did both. I was a motor cop for 4 years, but I did narcotics for most of my time. I did narcotics for 12 years, which was the most fun I've ever had in law enforcement. Was narcotics. Yeah. Like, I like my job now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I enjoy it, but this job came from a forced outside force, right? So if it were up to me, I would have stayed in narcotics and been able to wear my street clothes every day and just investigate narcotics. You know what I'm saying? So. And you're right. You're totally right. When it comes down to it, any job, I think it's with any job to really enjoy a job, because I love being the police, but I hate being a patrolman. I cannot stand driving and answering 911. That burnt me out so much. It was like I was so depressed. When I was in law enforcement, I think it was my 6th or 7th year, and I was still a patrol officer answering 911. I was just so unhappy. And then when I got to narcotics, that's when that love came back. So any job that you have, you're going to need to find that one thing that makes you happy in your job, right? It doesn't feel like work, right? Because I'm pretty sure you're loving your job this much, it doesn't feel like work when you go in. It feels like a comedy club sometimes, right? So, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because we run into the same exact things on the street. So, yeah, it's very important to find that niche.
Yeah. I think that for security guards, it's hard to think that like you can find a place that and maybe it comes with maturity. You know what I mean? I think that it's hard for younger guys who have that desire to be police officers, and maybe even guys who are a little bit older, my age or whatever, that want to be police officers. And I kind of fought with that for a while, going back and forth, where I was taking the NTN, I was submitting my resumes, and this was, during that 2021 era where police agencies were hurting. Like, they were reaching out and they were like, hey, like, come take your test and come do your physical. Let's rock and roll. But, as I've gotten older, I just really appreciate the autonomy of not having a large political, bureaucratic, group to answer to. I've done that before. I've been in the military. I've worked in law enforcement, and there's something to be said for finding a place where you fit in and where you're happy and where you're comfortable. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So before I became a police, I was a security officer as well. I was armed security, and I was part of a task force that we had where we just did the high crime, we did late night Waffle Houses and nightclubs and those things. Those are the places that we worked, right? And listen,
in what state?
North Carolina.
You're crazy.
I was actually in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You're crazy.
Looking back, I was getting paid $10 an hour and no insurance. Like,
yeah.
I had the most fun of my life, bro. I had the most fun of my life. But one thing about security that I just never really enjoyed was the fact that, just like the task force that we was at, apartment complex would call us about a problem, robberies, break-ins, or something like that. We'll be out there for 4 to 6 months, clean everything up, and then all of a sudden they don't need us no more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was the main thing that I just could not understand, or not. I understood it, but I just could not get with when it came down to it. I know I wanted to be the police. Being security was fun. It was the closest thing I could do to being police because I was underage.
Yeah.
But I knew I didn't want to stay in it that long because of that fact. You'll go 6 months of doing the job that they ask you to do. And if you do too good of a job, they're gonna get rid of you. If you don't do a good enough job, they're gonna get rid of you. So there's
you gotta walk that line.
They're gonna get rid of you regardless of what you do. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
That's why I really, really strove hard to get into law enforcement, because I knew that if I was to get out of law enforcement, it would be because I did something, not because of a contract or anything.
Right. Yeah. That is one of the drawbacks, and that's something that we'll talk about a little further. And I want to ask you a question about this. We were talking about whether or not security guards should qualify at 25 yards and beyond. So my personal opinion and conjecture is that private security does not have enough established training at the state level to where there is enough conversation around use of force, rules of engagement, understanding when to deploy a lethal encounter at that distance. And then on the other side of the equation is that security guards that I know, and this is, the vast majority of security guards that follow this channel, they don't have access to or the finances to go to the go to the range and train adequately enough to take a safe shot at 25 yards. However, the state is mandating for a lot of these private security entities in different states. I think here for Oregon, it might be 15, maybe 20 yards. But my conjecture is that if you're having people shoot at that distance for qualification, you're reinforcing that that's the shot that you want them to take. And I don't think that there's enough established training for security guards to be taking that shot. And I know personally, working in a grocery store, that's an issue where, you have, at any given time in the store, you might have 500, 600 people. So taking a shot at 25 yards, 75 feet where people are going to be running and panicking, and then you have backstop issues. Is that something that we should be doing? So my question to you, as someone who's in the law enforcement community, and you've often talked about security guards understanding their role, knowing what they should be involved in, what they shouldn't be involved in. Do you think that it's applicable for security guards to be qualifying at something like 25 yards?
I do. I've been a firearms instructor for years, and I think 25 yards qualification for anybody that's carrying in that capacity when it comes, because we all know law enforcement and security carry in the same capacity. If you're carrying a gun and a uniform, you're carrying it in the capacity of a law enforcement officer, vice versa, right? I think that 25 yards is something that people need to be comfortable with taking a shot. If so, really, when you say 75 yards, it does seem like it's long.
75 feet.
I'm sorry, 75 feet. It does seem like it's long. But when it comes down to the yardage of 25, you should be able to hit that silhouette carrying that firearm when it comes down to it, because not only will you get to a point of trying to defend somebody else, but you might have to defend yourself at 25 yards, right? Okay. So that needs to be something that you would be. I feel like I want to be able to defend myself at the yardage, at any yardage that gun is capable of shooting, right? So I do practice at 60 yards. I do practice at 80 yards with my handgun, yes. And I practice on steel, and it's just a torso silhouette. And as long as I hear the ding, I know I'm on target, right? And I understand the financial burden that a lot of people have when it comes to getting to the range and all that stuff. And that's why my department, we pay for our guys' range memberships and make sure we give them the ammunition to go. Now it's up to them to go, but They don't have to pay any money to go, right? So I understand that, but we also have to take accountability that we are carrying in a certain capacity to where that is a likely situation you may find yourself in, especially working at a supermarket or something like that, because these aisles are almost at 25 yards. A lot of the aisles that you go in a supermarket are at 25 yards. So yes, you need to be proficient at shooting a gun at 25 yards.
Do you think that with that there needs to be an enhanced level of training? Because I want to show a video. I want to show a video This is from 2021, and you'll remember the situation when I bring it up. It's the Burlington Coat Factory shooting. I think it happened in either California or Arizona. And so this is a police officer that is addressing a subject. What had happened in the story was there's a guy that comes into a Target, mentally ill. You know, he's got all the signs. He comes in, he's messing around, he's loitering, he's dancing. I mean, like literally stuff that I see on a daily basis. You know, he's got a bicycle, and the security guards, they interact with him, but you can tell that they're just not really wanting to get too involved. He ultimately takes a bike lock and chain off of the bike and then goes through the store and starts hitting people in the head. I mean, violently hitting people in the head. So they call the police. The police show up. The news story that I'm going to show, let me make sure I give proper credit here so I don't get in trouble here. Hang on. The news story that I'm going to show is coming out of Fox 11 Los Angeles. And unfortunately, in this body cam, it's pretty short. The longer body cam footage, it shows the quickness at which the police officer that's responding with the AR, how fast and excited he comes through the group. The entire group of officers are moving into the location to address the subject. I don't know if this person that takes the shot is a sergeant or if he's in some sort of command, but he is literally moving past people in order to get to the front to take the shot. And you hear people behind him saying, slow down, slow down. And I don't think that what they're telling him is slow down in terms of how fast he's moving. They're telling him to slow down in terms of thinking about what you're doing.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is that when he takes this shot, which I think is maybe at about 20, 25 feet, I'll let you make the decision on that. He over penetrates the backstop, and there is a young 14-year-old girl that is trying on a prom dress, and she loses her life. And so for me, when I talk about security guards not taking that shot at 25 yards, when I look at a grocery store, you're right. The aisle is about 75 feet, but behind that aisle, and I put up a picture in our community tab the other day, that back wall houses, you know, stock rooms, storerooms, warehousing areas, the cold case, the cooler, the dairy area, the back part of the meat department. And so short of there being more training in terms of security guards understanding that, I mean, we're talking the basic 4 firearm safety rules, but you're going to see in this video that a seasoned police officer doesn't think about the 4 firearm safety rules.
So that's the thing about it, though. It doesn't matter what yardage you're at. If it's going to over penetrate, it's going to over penetrate, right? So you're shooting an AR-15, like an AR-15 will over penetrate probably at 75 yards.
Okay.
Right. So that's like something that you really can't, you really cannot say if it will. Now, there are some bullets that will stop that, will help stop that from happening as much. But if they're not using those bullets, but just like a 9mm could over penetrate at 25 yards. A 9mm will penetrate at 10 yards. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it is one of those things you always want to keep in mind when it comes down to over penetration. But I'm more scared of somebody missing at 25 yards and hitting somebody and they're going through them. Right. Yeah. So that's my main concern when it comes down to shooting at 25 yards.
Let's pull up the story here. Here we go.
Okay.
Tonight, we are getting another look at dramatic body camera video released by the LAPD. It shows the moment an officer opened fire inside a North Hollywood Burlington store, accidentally killing an innocent teenage girl. We do need to warn you, this video is intense.
Hey, she's bleeding. She's bleeding.
Police responded to a call of a man assaulting people at the store last Thursday. Officers encountered that suspect upstairs, and one of them opened fire. The suspect, 24-year-old Daniel Lopez, was killed, but so was 14-year-old Valentina Oriana Peralta. A bullet came through the wall and struck her as she was there in a dressing room. Community activists say the shooting never should have happened.
At the moment that the shots were fired, there was no imminent threat to anybody. That Daniel Lopez was a clear 20 feet or more away from any other person in sight.
The parents of that teenage girl are holding a press conference tomorrow. LAPD Chief Michael Moore has promised a thorough, complete, and transparent investigation.
You know, Diesel, my biggest concern is that for security guards, we don't have a union. We don't have qualified immunity. You know, in a situation like this where all things considered, the guard, let's just put a guard in the situation other than a cop. All things being considered, the guard doing the right thing, taking that shot, and that being the response, that being the situation. Once the cameras start rolling, once the parents are out in front of the cameras, once the people are demanding accountability, there's no safety net for the security guard. And so where I understand the importance of being able to take that shot, and I advocate for that. I advocate for all of us in a EDC defensive mindset, sheepdog protector of ourselves and our family. I advocate for us to be able to do that. I train well beyond 25 yards, right? But I think it's difficult for people to think about the capacity in which we work and not look at that from a realistic standpoint. Because if this was a security guard in the same situation, where does he get the defense from? Because the company's going to cut you. They're going to say, hey, you know, you didn't have to take that shot because as a security guard, you have no duty to act. You were 30 feet away from the guy. You could have just started directing people outside of the store. We're going to go ahead and cut ties with you. And so I look at that in my situation and it's like, hey, we're going to need to put your house up for collateral so that we can defend you. You know what I mean? Like, even if I'm found to have done the right thing. So, you know, I understand the importance of it, but you know, that's why I asked you, because you had said before, you're like, look, we need you guys to do a specific role. We don't need you guys to do the cop stuff. We'll come, we'll get there, we'll do the cop stuff. And that might mean that leaves a little bit of a gap in time for response. And I understand where a lot of security guards go, hey man, like, what are you talking about? We're there, we're armed, we should be the response. But people have to look at the reality of this. And in today's day and age, you do the right thing, you take out the perpetrator, but you kill a 14-year-old. Now you're in a situation where this is what you're dealing with for the next 5 years, and you have no backing. Like, what do you think about that?
So I don't know if it's there or if y'all have this or not, but we have what we call the Good Samaritan law, and security officers fall under the Good Samaritan law. And this would be probably one of those things that will fall under the Good Samaritan law because it wasn't intentional, right? Even though the security officer was acting to save the life of someone else and took an innocent life, it still wasn't intentional, right? So I think the Good Samaritan law would play in with a security officer here in North Carolina. Okay. Now, when it comes to this, is what I tell my guys all the time. We might have qualified immunity, but you don't know how it feels to take a life, right? So qualified immunity don't mean nothing when it's in your head. You dream about it. It's something that you think about all the time, right? It's something that comes up out of nowhere that you think about. You see that person's face. You hear the last breath that they took. Like it is, nobody knows what it is to take a life, right? So qualified immunity is not having qualified immunity or having it is the least of my worries, right? When it comes down to it. I think that when it comes down to a security officer, you have to know the risks. You know what I'm saying? So even though you may not have that qualified immunity or you may not have that Good Samaritan law, you still know the risk of being a security officer, just like a police officer. You know the risk, you know what you're getting into. Though that's one of the things you need to think about as being a security officer, right? Because you never know what may happen. There may be some kind of program, insurance or something like that you can get to help you when it comes, if it comes down to a situation like that. And that might be something to look into because, you know, they have the concealed carry insurance that people can get here in North Carolina that helps you with some of those things. And I tell all my officers, you have a concealed carry and you're carrying outside your jurisdiction, you're not covered. You're just like a regular citizen, right? So you need to get some kind of insurance if you're going to be carrying that firearm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that conversation brings up another topic that I wanted to get into, and that's the compensation for court time and how that would potentially impact security guards. I had a situation where I had a not a hands-on situation, but basically a detention of a situation of a subject rather. And as it moved its way through the court process and it gets time to prosecute this person, it's quite possible that I'll have to go to court. And so this is a first time situation for me. Most of the times in Portland, for the entirety of the time that I've been here, they have not been prosecuting people for anything. So, I've had multiple knives pulled on me. I've had a firearm, a real firearm pulled on me, and I've had a fake firearm pulled on me twice. And in all three of these situations, there was no prosecution. So long story short, the most recent situation of a person that pulled a very large knife on me that I had to hold at taser point, that is now looking like it's going to be prosecuted. So a situation that I've never dealt with before, this is going to potentially cause me to have to go and testify, and it's going to fall on a day that I normally work. So in the event that I have to go, there is some discrepancy on whether or not I will be compensated by my company for that time, or if I will be compensated, at the full rate, hourly rate. So this is a situation where if I have to go to court, potentially I'm going to be losing money to do the right thing in terms of helping to prosecute this person. So I had asked a question to people that are in the security company. I said, or in security companies rather, on the community page, I said, if you have to go and testify, do you know if your company will compensate you? And if they will compensate you, will they compensate you at your hourly rate for the amount of time that you're there? And a lot of people didn't know, because this is something that doesn't really come up a lot. So I'm assuming that if you're a police officer and you have to go to court, you get compensated at your hourly rate or whatever, right? But again, in private security, that's not necessarily, I'm not saying that it's not the case for some people, but it's not necessarily the case for everyone. So my question was, if this is the way that your company is going to proceed, does that impact whether or not you will, be willing to go hands-on in a situation or get involved in a situation, knowing that it might cost you down the road financially, even in this regard? What are your thoughts on that?
Why? Well, why would you? My thing, North Carolina, they paid. If you had to go to court, they paid you. What your hourly rate was, period, point blank.
For security or law enforcement?
Security, yeah. When I was in security, I went to court 3 or 4 times, and they paid me my hourly rate. I didn't see any loss in money or anything like that. So that was one of the things that they did. I don't know if that's, I would think that was a labor law, kind of, what I'm saying? When it comes down to it, they would have to compensate you for doing something for the company for that contract, right? So I would think they would have to compensate you, whatever your hourly rate for that contract is. But knowing that, guys, those are the questions that need to be asking during your hiring process. You get what I'm saying? Like, I never really thought of that as being an issue when it came to security, because you being a security officer, same thing as loss prevention. I see loss prevention in court more than any other person when it comes to security, right? Yeah. So, and I know they get compensated, but I just never thought about that being an issue. Yeah. And with it maybe being an issue, I could see where officers would be standoffish to do anything because they don't want to end up in court.
Yeah.
So that goes both ways with law enforcement. Officers don't want to end up in court because nothing's going to get prosecuted, and they're going to waste their day in court. And that's why a lot of officers have chosen not to really charge people with things, because they know it's not going to get prosecuted.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just another thing to think about, for the security guards who are out there who are watching this channel, the issues that we bring up and that we talk about, these are important topics, because that's something that you probably would never even think to ask. Hey, if I have to go to court, who pays for that? But things like, if you have to go to court, if you have to defend yourself in a shooting or a tasing or pepper spray, we live in a time right now where someone could easily come back and say, hey, you pepper sprayed me and that caused, irrecoverable harm for my eyesight. I've lost,
right,
2 points on my eyesight, and that's something that I want to sue for. So we have to have some sort of protection, but these are conversations you have to have with your companies. What I have found mostly with security, with private security, this is not a shot at any particular company, it's just what I'm finding across the board, is that the security companies don't tell you any of this because they generally don't want you to know the answer. They're attempting to make the most amount of money possible while breaking you off a little bit of bread and then hoping that nothing happens. There's no talk of the contingency program because there is no contingency program, and that's the risk that you take when you're working in a private security capacity, because you're given the autonomy, you're given the lack of bureaucratic oversight, all the things that I talked about in terms of the police department. But what comes with that is the ability for those companies to also, not have these things in place that would be commonplace in a more structured environment. If that makes sense, right?
Right.
So something else we need to talk about is here in Oregon, they just passed something called HB 2572. Okay, I think that's an S. That's supposed to be a 2. But HB 2572, and we need to talk about how that can impact private security. Now, what blew my mind is that this is something that here in Oregon, we were fighting over the last 2 years. It's basically called a anti-paramilitary bill. And the thought process behind it is basically that when we had the Antifa protest in 2020, all across the country, you saw people taking up arms, protesting the riots that were going on. You saw people going to courthouses during COVID, fully dressed in their kits, and carrying their firearms and talking about the lockdowns, things of that nature. And most of the people that were involved in the display, the performative display of walking around with their firearms, were on what you would call the political right. Okay.
Right.
So here in Oregon, the political left have passed this bill, which states that you cannot in any way, in concert of 2 or more people, do anything to dissuade the rights of the people that are protesting. This is basically set up to protect Antifa. If Antifa is marching through your neighborhood, which I witnessed firsthand working security for executive protection for the news organizations during the riots, if they're marching in your neighborhood and you and a neighbor get firearms and stand out in front of your house to protect your home, you are in concert with another person with a firearm, and they are considering that paramilitary. Now, where this thing gets really off the rails and why I'm bringing it up is that we here in Oregon had to legally fight to get a carve-out exception for security. I apologize for not having the House bill up right now. I had it and it's not loading.
Well, it says right here. It says right here, and I'm just Googling. You tell me if that's right or not. It says creates right of action for person injured by paramilitary activity. Authority authorizes Attorney General to bring civil action for injunctive relief against paramilitary activity and authorizes use by the Attorney General of investigative demand during investigation into preliminary activity.
Now scroll down and look at the part where it talks about private security. There was a writing. Now, if you're on the Oregon bill that's already passed, they might have taken that out because we fought for an exception. It said that anyone carrying a firearm, 2 or more people providing security, if you were involved in anything that a person could sense that they were being intimidated, they could bring this against you. The Attorney General could bring this against you as a security entity.
Well, it says private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associated under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security service unit. What?
See that?
What the heck?
You see that?
Private military, they're saying private military is law enforcement and security service.
Yep. So that is how the bill was written. We were able to get a carve out for security while you're working under the direction of the state. So if you're working as a private security contractor under contract, under your, here in Oregon, that would be DPSST. I know it's BSIS in California, some other things in other places. If you're working in conjunction with a contract and performing your duty as an officer of the state, you're fine. But we had to fight for that because originally the way that it is written is the way that it was going to be interpreted. So, you know, if we are working at my location where I work, we have anywhere from 3 to 4 officers at one time, all armed. Where I work also is a known location for protest. So we're approaching the 2024 election. Let's just say that it looks like Donald Trump is going to win. The people here in Portland would start to protest, right? As they're protesting, our building that I primarily service is all glass. So that's a prime location for people to come and try and damage or destroy. If the 3 to 4 of our security officers were to engage in any sort of action where the protesters could viably articulate that we were putting them in fear of their constitutional right to protest, then the attorney general could come after us for this paramilitary action. Now, most people say, well, that's absurd. Well, that's assuming that you're not me, who is a very vocal Second Amendment advocate who has sued the governor of the state, who has sued the attorney general of the state for our Second Amendment rights under Measure 114. I'm involved in the federal lawsuit. So imagine the situation if I were to be involved in something like that with this paramilitary bill as it stands, if it didn't have that private security carve out. Now, people that are doing firearms training, people that are doing, you know, training or tactics, all of that, it gives a very wide breadth to the attorney general to make that decision.
We're talking about on here. It says members of an organization that is authorized under state or federal law to provide paramilitary, law enforcement, or security service training, or to engage in paramilitary activity or the provision of law enforcement or security service when performing the functions authorized by law in the case of paramilitary activity and law enforcement services when under the direct and control of the government authority. So that basically the section that takes security services out of it. As long as you're working under a licensed security company through the state, correct?
And we had to fight for that. Because listen, this was going to go through without anybody knowing. I work with an organization that watches for things like this, and they were able to catch it, and we were able to get in and get that card.
Let me ask you this: did they have law enforcement already on here, or did they have to put law enforcement in there also?
They had police on there.
Oh, so they did have law enforcement. They just didn't have security.
Yeah.
That's wow.
That's wild, isn't it?
That's crazy.
That's crazy. But so hey, this is what blew my mind. So I see this over the past year and I'm thinking that it's crazy. And then I'm scrolling through YouTube and somebody said that, I don't know if it was Illinois or if it was Massachusetts, but another state is implementing this exact same bill. It's copy and paste. And I put on there, I said, hey, this just went through in Oregon. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, this is copy and paste. So you're seeing a lot of these gun control bills that are just being, pushed in one state after another. But people need to be aware of this. If you're working security, you need to be aware of this type of bill, this paramilitary bill. Watch for that during your legislative session, because if they don't carve out for private security and you guys are working in private security, you can find yourself getting jammed up. And they give the attorney general a very wide reach in terms of what they consider you being involved in paramilitary. If you're out with 3 or 4 people that you know and you guys are in kit and you're running drills and you're shooting targets and you're posting that to YouTube, and then you have some very anti left wing or democratic type stuff on your Facebook page, be very careful. Like I've been telling people, it's not a joke. They're doing this for a reason, so you got to be careful with that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't Antifa, don't they dress up like that?
Yeah. But they're not doing it for them. They're not doing it for them.
Right. That's people that are. So basically, they're not basically saying that if you dress up like that, it's the law. It's against the law. They're saying if you dress up like that and stop somebody from, protesting or anything like that, that's what they're going after, right?
They want to make sure that anyone who wants to stop people from marching, protesting, or doing any of these types of activities that have happened in Portland historically, that they have a clear path to do it.
But what if the protesters are dressed up like a private paramilitary organization?
If the Proud Boys were to walk through downtown doing what they normally do, they would probably get hit with this. If Antifa were to walk through downtown and the Proud Boys were to station on the side of the street in opposition to Antifa, they would also still get hit with this. It's not going to go towards the left. It's going to go to the right. Wow. Without getting overly political.
Wow. Without getting overly political, right?
I try my best. I'm not trying to jam you up.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put you in a bad position or anything.
Wow. This is crazy.
Yeah, man. Hey, the next topic is called I Read It on Reddit. I want to get your opinion on this, okay? We'll lighten the mood a little bit. This is from a security guard on Reddit. He says, I've been a security guard for over a year now. I work with Allied. And my current position is basically getting paid $16 an hour to watch YouTube and definitely not pirate movies on site. However, I have bought a car and expenses are going up. I'm considering either a new site for better hours. He's working the 3:30 to 12 a.m. shift. I've done that before. A different firm, even though I do jack, and I still do more than literally anyone, or just leaving as a whole. Any input from other guards. So this guy, he stuck out to me because, like a lot of people, he just isn't happy. He's not happy. He doesn't feel fulfilled. And so my thoughts to you were, what is your advice to security guards who are working what are boring sites? They're mundane jobs. They're just repetitive. How do they find value in what they're doing?
You can't find value in something you don't see valuable. Right. So there's no, like, if you don't see your job as valuable, you can't find value in it. There's no way you can do that. Right. So if you're working somewhere and you just don't feel like you don't feel like your job is valuable or you're doing what you need to be doing, then you're going to have to go somewhere else and find another job. I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
What I will say is, being a young person, I kind of felt the same way. And looking back, it was like, what were you thinking?
You had it made.
RDO is what we call it. Retired on duty. ROD. Yeah. Retired on duty. That's what we call it. Those are some of the best sites that you can do so much at those sites, right?
Yeah.
I get it, man. Full of piss and vinegar, right? You want to get out there, run and gun, and do all that stuff. But as in the field of security, right? You have to know your place. You have got to know your place, right? There are times where you're going to be running and gunning and you might have that opportunity, but security in a whole is not that. That's not what security in a whole is.
Right.
It's just like in law enforcement, a school resource officer. We have this saying in law enforcement: once a school resource officer, always a school resource officer. He ain't going to be the one on SWAT. He's not going to be the one pulling a whole bunch of cars over. He's going to be the one carrying babies, feeding babies. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a place for everything. Some things, make people happy. Some things don't. But when it comes down to security, you have to know where you're at in security. If you get a security gig where you can run and gun, you're lucky. You're lucky if that's what you want to do, right? I mean, like, you are very lucky. If you get a job where you're sitting there watching YouTube like this guy, you're like many others that are just like, that's average security type work, right? So we just have to know where we're at when we're getting a job, and when we're working is like, this is what it calls for and this is what we're doing.
I would also add that people have, and again, this goes to, man, I feel like I'm the old guy now. I can't believe I'm saying this, but people have to be able to separate how you make your money from who you are. Right? If you are pulling a 10-hour or a 12-hour shift and all you have to do is look at YouTube, and assuming that maybe in that situation you could be doing homework or whatever, and I get it, people are going to watch this and go, hey, you're a security guard, you need to be paying attention and watching. I get that. There are some gigs, like this guy is saying, where you're literally posted in a position because they have to check a box. Right. And they're not asking you to watch cameras. They're not asking you to do anything other than, hey, every hour, go check this door. If it's unlocked, dial this number. If it's locked, check this box. The rest of the time, we don't care what you do. I worked for, it was Allied Barton back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. And my job, I worked for the Social Security Administration.
Oh, I did the same thing.
All I had to do was sit at a desk, and when people came in, sign them in.
Ticket's right there. Get a ticket over there.
Yo, grab a ticket. You know what I mean? Hey,
get a ticket over there. That's all I use. The ticket thing, right? Just grab a ticket and have a seat.
And bro, they were like, we don't want you talking to people. We don't want you interacting with people. We don't want you walking around. Just sit here.
Literally, that's all you
sign
do.
Them in, get them a ticket, and then when it's time to go home, lock the door. Aside from that, if ain't nothing happening, don't bother us, bro. Okay. Yep. You know what I mean? Yep. So you have to be able to work that job and say, look, this is how I'm making my bread for these 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And then outside of your work, that's when you get to do the stuff that makes you who you are, whether that's your family, your hobbies, your secondary job, whatever, you know, if you're trying to create a YouTube channel, whatever it is. But I think that a lot of young people have a hard time understanding, like, you have to segment these things. And how you make your money and pay your bills does not have to be invigorating. Like everybody now, my kids included, you know, this generation, they just feel like everything has to be exciting and it has to be fulfilling and it has to be life-changing and meaningful. And some things are just things. Some things are just the things that you do to pay the bill. You know,
a lot of these kids, a lot of these the younger generation, they want it right now. Like they don't want to have to work towards something, right? And I read that statement where he's saying he was, bored just watching YouTube, but you could, just like you said, you could take that time to study for the law enforcement exam to be a cop, you know what I'm saying? So you can get to that point. But to just say that I want to be doing something more, I think that's one of those things where, just like me, I've only got a high school diploma.
Okay.
Right. I don't have any college or anything like that. So me being a chief just was never anywhere in the realm of anything. Right. Even though I did want to be some kind of supervision, I wanted to, at least make a sergeant or a lieutenant or something like that. Never thought I'd be a chief. But now that I'm here, it's like I would have never tried to rush anything, man. It came to me when I wasn't even trying to get it.
Right.
Right. So we just have, like I said, we just have to understand where we're at when it comes to our jobs and know that our jobs there is a purpose for your job, regardless of what you want to say. If you're just watching YouTube, there is a purpose.
There is. You
know what I'm saying? So let's just keep that in mind.
Diesel, I want to run by you a very tragic situation that happened this week. There was a gentleman named Eddie McAllister. Eddie McAllister, by all reports, was a security guard in the California area. He gets off work. He heads to grab a cheeseburger at a local restaurant, gets into an altercation with a guy and ends up losing his life. He gets shot. So, first and foremost, respect to him and his family. This is not a situation that happened on duty, but it did happen to somebody that works in the security industry. It's a brother, so we respect and recognize his loss of life. But there is some surveillance footage that I have, and I wanted to show it because I thought that in the tragedy of his situation, there are some takeaways that we can definitely, as security guards and as general people, that we can learn from this. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. So let me pull up the video here, and it's going to run 3 times. It's going to run at normal speed first, and then it's going to run twice, I believe, at half speed. It does not show anything in terms of him getting shot. It stops just short of him getting shot. Again, I believe this is from Fox 11. Credit to Fox 11 News out of California. So we'll play this. We'll let it play through, and then we'll break it down. Okay. All right, here we go. There's no sound to it, by the way.
Oof, oof, oof. Mm.
So in that situation, right where the video stops, the subject that he's fighting with rolls back on his butt and fires a couple shots into his belly. So for me, my thought process in watching this, and I'm one of those people that's a staunch advocate for self-defense training. I talk about the benefits of doing jujitsu and getting back into jujitsu for myself. But this situation really stuck out to me, very similar to the shooting at 25 yards. I think that a lot of people misconstrue what you do in training and what you do in tactics with the reality of the street, right? So jujitsu is a great art form for you to be able to understand what it's like to go hands-on with someone, to control someone, to be able to mount or break that mount. But that art form, no matter how great it is, it's not applicable to an actual street fight long term. If
Right.
you end up on the ground, it's great to know. If the fight goes to the ground, it's great to know. But in no circumstances should you, as a security guard or you as a general person, be putting yourself into a wrestling match with a person on the street, because you have so many other variables. Just regular, if you're at a nightclub or a bar, you're working as a bouncer, and you can be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you got somebody wrapped up. Where are your hands? Your hands are now controlling another person, and you can't deal with the people that are around you. And we all have seen videos. We know how enticing it is for the average person who's standing around that has nothing to lose to kick the shit out of you in the head,
Mm-hmm.
or to stab you, or to do anything to you. So, when I'm looking at this video, the first thing that comes to mind is that street fights are not sanctioned. You're, Eddie McAllister in this situation, I don't know what led up to it. I don't say any of this to be disparaging, but this idea of putting hands on somebody and throwing multiple punches and making that point that I'm going to show you what you got yourself into. There's many opportunities where I can see in that video where he could have broke contact, right? Like, assuming that he was in the right in that situation, he's in that fight, he's throwing those punches. I'm looking at that, I'm going, hey, either leave in a situation where things are going south, attempt to de-escalate that situation, or do something where you're able to break contact and bounce, or ultimately end the threat. Because I don't see any positive outcome when you're getting into a quote unquote fight on the street, because there's so many variables. Like, I've always told my wife, like, I am not fighting somebody on the street. I will do everything I can. I will walk away. I will run away from the situation before I get into an actual fight. And then if they pursue me to a situation where I can't any further run from that, then it's going to be break contact and bounce. And then if I can't do that, I'm going to end the threat. But what I don't want to do is get on the ground in this situation and get into a fight. So my question to you is that, with security guards and people in general, primarily looking to things like, jujitsu and defensive tactics, what do you say to the security guards in relation to how things actually unfold on the street when you get into situations like this?
I think a security guard needs to keep in mind that everything you do should be self-defense, right? That didn't look like self-defense to me. That looked like straight up heads up fighting, like,
Yeah.
square up, let's go. You know what I'm saying? That did not look like necessarily self-defense because he wasn't trying to keep his hands in. And it didn't seem like you said he was off duty, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the problem I've seen a few security guard videos. I've investigated a few situations where security guards were involved in some assaults where we had no choice but to charge because they squared up and straight up went to fighting. Right? It was not a sir, you know, calm down, sir. It was, oh, you said something about my mama.
Right.
It's going down. Like, we got to take that street mentality out of these professions, man, because you know you're not a street dude, right? So let's take that out of this profession. I know you're doing a job. You got a lot of security officers that are just doing a job to get a check.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, it's a black eye on the profession when you have something like this happen, and we really can't say that our man here was in the right.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that looking at that video. You know what I'm saying? Very hard to say that. So I know he shouldn't have died, but also he shouldn't have been involved in a street fight.
Yeah.
You know, so
you don't win anything in this situation, no matter what happens.
Oh,
you know.
I mean, and truthfully speaking, if he's wearing the company jacket, like, you lose your job by trying to see whose swing is bigger. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know what led up to it. I don't know if the guy was just relentless and trying to fight him or whatever, but it didn't, like, the video that we saw didn't look like it was something the security officer was trying to get away from or trying to.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, again, like, we don't know the context of what happened before, but when the video starts, he's not running away and then getting confronted by this guy. He's walking towards the guy. He's throwing the punches. And this is a good reminder to people that you don't know who you're arguing with. I tell that to people that I work with, you know, partners and younger security guards that come into our location. And, you know, you see that the guy's wearing his vest, he's got his firearm, he's feeling himself, and some crackhead's talking shit. And he's like, hey, I'm right here. And it's like, well, okay, but you don't know who you're talking to. Like, that guy is down and out now.
Beat from something like that. But they get, boy, because I know there was one time we was working at Waffle House. I was a security officer, and my partner was a special police officer. We have special police here.
Yeah,
it's company police. And this drunk, short white guy was just talking a bunch of shit, and he was just trying to be funny. Well, the police officer didn't think it was funny, so he went hands on. And I tell you, it maybe took 5 seconds for that dude to break 5 of his ribs.
Yeah.
And he was on the ground. And I was like, I didn't even have enough time to grab him.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, bro, like, I don't want no smoke. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know why we put our hands on you in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So it's an ego thing, man. It's a huge ego thing we got to get away from.
Diesel, back in 2019, I was living in Missouri. And I met with a state representative that was he was talking to me about potentially running for office. This guy was like 67, and he looked like your average old man school teacher. So we have dinner and we talk about politics. And at the end of the conversation, he says, were you in the military by chance? And I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm a veteran. You know, I did 6 years in the Air Force. And he goes, oh, I did 15 in the Army. And I said, what did you do? And he goes, I was a Green Beret in Nam. I said, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I was a communications expert. He goes, I was a part of the first group that ever did halo jumps, high altitude, low opening.
Wow.
And he said, I did 3 tours. And I'm looking at this guy and I said, somebody would really make a mistake by thinking you were the wrong person or the right person to rob outside of a convenience store. And he looked at me and he sat back in his chair and he goes, it's happened before. And I thought to myself, like, man, you never know who people are.
You never do.
You know what I mean? You go grab this old geriatric looking motherfucker. Next thing you know, you wake up somewhere
in a wheelchair somewhere. Yeah.
The nurse is like, calm down. It's 2025. You've been out for a long time. Just take a deep breath. Okay. Your legs don't work. We got a lot to talk about, but you're going to be okay.
Oh yeah, I can see it, man. I can see it.
Oh my God. All right. So the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, let me see. Let me get I got my notes up here. Oh, wait. I think that okay, that was the career change. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me bring this down. Street fights. All right. So Q&A. All right. So if anybody has any questions for Diesel before we get off of the stream, put them up in the comment section. I want to ask you a question. What has changed from being an officer to being the chief? Like, what has changed that you would have never in a million years thought would be different?
Me being the chief.
Yeah.
But the way I view law enforcement has changed tremendously within this last 2 years, almost 3 years. Like, it has changed so much within this last 2 years. I didn't realize how political any position in law enforcement was when it comes to running a department, right? So I thought being a sheriff was a very, very political job, when it came down to it, because they have to get voted in, right? The sheriff has to get voted in. Police chief, they get appointed, but the politics are just ridiculous, right? And the people that really don't know what law enforcement is are the politicians.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to navigate that when you hear them say certain things out on the streets and then they come back behind closed doors and you hear exactly what they really think.
Right.
Right. So I think my whole outlook on law enforcement as a whole has changed, because I not only have to look out for myself, my officers, I have to look out for the police department and the town. Right. So I have to make sure everything is good with how we operate. And that's why I go back and say, like, everybody has a boss. Policies are made for the dumbest ass you got on your department. So
yeah.
If the policy is there, it's because somebody done did something to get it there, right? And the only thing that I've always been worried about, even before I became the chief, was I hope they're not changing policy because of something I did. And that's the main thing that you want to be, concerned about when it comes down to it. If they're changing policy or they're changing rules or something, just make sure it's not because of something you did.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How do security guards, and if police officers are watching this, police officers, but people in general, how do people in general, primarily security guards, find motivation for 2024?
Wow.
It's been a rough couple of years. We've had COVID. We've had a very, tumultuous couple of years with, just dynamics between races and immigration. And we've got a couple of wars, inflation is through the roof. It's a difficult time for people. So as somebody who's a little bit older and more mature and now in a leadership position, how do you, what do you say to people in order to, for them to find the motivation to keep pushing and trying to succeed in 2024?
Man, that's a hard question, man. That is a hard question to answer, because, I tell my guys, even though I can't pay you the most, right? You're at a department that's not going to try to get your career, right? They're not going to throw you under the bus or anything like that. But to keep your motivation, or to find your motivation, man, I just tell myself, just stay on the plan. Stay on the plan, regardless of what happens. You know what you're going for. You know what your goals are. Stick to it and just keep going. Like, don't worry about what everything else that's going on that might affect you. Just don't let it affect you. Try your hardest not to let it affect you and just keep going.
Okay. All right. So we got a question coming in from Rizzy Lyricist. Have you ever witnessed a security guard getting attacked? If so, how did it play out?
Yeah. I've seen it a couple times, man. Being a security officer and a police officer, I've seen it a couple times, and it goes both ways. You have, my favorite story of being a security officer is, and I know you've seen it. You got that one security. So I was working with a company, and we worked check cashing places.
Okay.
We had this one security officer. Ain't nobody gonna come up here and rob. I swear I'm gonna shoot him between the eyes. This and that. Walked around with a cane, and he was the baddest man you could find.
Right. Shaft.
And also the only one that got robbed.
Right.
Right. So like you see it all the time. I've seen security officers whoop some butt. I've seen officers get their butt whooped. Same thing with police officers. Like I've seen it, and it all comes down to training. It all comes down to training and confidence, right?
Yeah.
A lot of problems that come from any kind of encounter you have with somebody, be it physical or non-physical, is confidence.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have the confidence to be able to either talk your way or fight your way out, you're in a losing battle. Right. So I mean that's what it comes down to a lot.
But can people learn confidence, or is that something that just comes with time?
It comes with time, but you can be taught it also. You can be taught how to get yourself out, but you have to have the experience to show yourself you can do it also, right? You can't just say, I'm like that. You know, I see the philosophy that a lot of people have when it comes to the boxing. If you train boxing and all that stuff, you know, they tell their boxers, nobody can beat you. Don't ever say anybody can beat you, period, point blank. And start believing that, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you have to work things out through your head before it actually happens to know or to feel comfortable in a situation and get the confidence up.
Yeah. So last question for anybody that is currently in security that wants to become a police officer, what are the 2 things that they should focus on?
So one of the things that really that is a red flag for me when it comes to somebody getting out of security into law enforcement is when they say I have experience. Because you don't, right? Security is a totally different animal than law enforcement. Totally different animal, right? So it scares police departments when security officers say I have experience in law enforcement to a point, because we know you don't, right? We know that it's not actual law enforcement experience. Yeah, you might have experience with carrying a gun and talking to people. But you can have experience talking to people just working at a grocery store, and you can have experience carrying a gun by getting your CCWs or getting your gun permit or something like that, right? So law enforcement is just a totally different animal. If somebody is wanting to get into law enforcement out of security, you have to have an open mind to tell yourself you are brand new in this, you don't know anything, and you're about to learn a whole new atmosphere. And I'm saying this coming from security too, because I was that same person. I was in law enforcement. I mean, I was in security. I worked at high crime, you know, nightclubs, fights, doing all this stuff. But it's not the same when you get in law enforcement. It is nowhere near the same. And I just, you know, if anybody's wanting to do that, you just can't have that mentality that you've already got the experience you need to be the police, because you don't.
What do you think it is that's the biggest difference? Is it that you're working in an industry where you're tasked with potentially depriving people of their freedom? So like it's a completely different animal. Like, what do you think it is that makes that, you know, that difference that people are unaware of?
Well, the mindset of a law enforcement officer has to be different from a security officer, because anything that a person does in front of you could potentially take their freedom, right? For a security officer, anything they do in front of you needs to be something connected to the property that you're protecting, right? So it's different. It's totally different when it comes to answering 911, talking on the radio, driving that car at the blue lights and siren. Like it's just the whole atmosphere of it. Security is focused on one thing, right? And that is whatever that contract calls for. Law enforcement is focused on whatever those general statutes and laws say they can't do, that person cannot do, right? So it's just a totally different mindset and atmosphere when you're in the 2 positions.
Yeah.
And please don't think I'm trying to talk down on security, because that's not what I'm doing. It's just the fact that, you know, you wearing a uniform with a badge on it does not equate as being law enforcement.
Yeah, it's nursing, right, and doctoral. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the nurse has a very specific job and they have a needed job, but the nurse is not a doctor. She's not going to be cracking open ribs and working on your heart,
Right.
no matter how good of a nurse she is. She has a job and she has a lane. And what's crazy, and this goes back to the whole conversation of the niche. I have found that I am comfortable in this niche, and I like it. I like where I'm at, what I'm doing, the people that I work with, the people that I service. Not to say that I would never get into policing. I'm getting a little bit older now, but I think it's important to know where your strengths are. And in the industry that I'm at, the location that I'm at, the type of places that we service, I say this with 100% no hesitation. They need people with my outlook and mindset. That's not run-of-the-mill security guard, because what we're being asked to do is so much more complex than what we should be doing.
Right.
And people who don't understand that and don't appreciate the people that don't appreciate how sensitive that dynamic is,
Right.
are going to put lives and jobs in jeopardy.
Right. Yep. You're totally right. So when it comes down to it, like I know how a lot of security officers feel, man, because like I said, I was there. I worked a apartment complex where the apartment would call the security line before they called 911. So you were answering domestic violence calls all the time, different calls that the same kind of calls you get in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But it's still different because you can't determine if that person goes to jail or not.
Right.
You're not investigating if, you know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah.
So it's just a different thing you do. Now, I would say that hiring a security officer, I would hire a security officer before I would hire a civilian.
Yeah.
Because you have had that rig on. You have worn a vest. You've worn that, that badge, and you've worn that badge with some kind of pride in it to say that you're some kind of authority to that area, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there is a connection to it, but it's just two totally different jobs.
If people are on the fence about getting into law enforcement because of, the political outlook of it, or maybe how people view police officers now, it's probably, I would say, more derogatory now than it's ever been, how people view police across the board.
Actually, it's not.
You don't think so?
No, it's not.
What are your thoughts on that?
The problem is that the ones that have so much negative to say about law enforcement, they're just so loud, and the ones that support are just so quiet, right? So, man, every week, probably out of the 5 days I work, I probably have to pay for my lunch once. Every other time somebody's paying for my lunch. They're bringing food to the department. They're dropping off cards. And I'm talking about just like in the middle of the year where there are no holidays or anything. They're saying thank you and things of that sort. You don't find nearly as many people that do not like law enforcement than you do. Now, when it comes to politics, we don't have those problems down here in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
You might have them up there, but shoot, I can swear, I think wasn't it Portland where they defunded the law enforcement or something like that?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you right now, our politicians on both sides was like, we are not gonna be like those people.
Like, y'all have lost your mind. And what you said? You said it's like the vocal minority, and that's what we have in Portland. The vocal minority, the people that are, the least committed to the city, the people that are least committed to pushing forward any positive aspect of Portland. Those are the people that make the most noise and get the most attention. They're the people that get their policies pushed through. And, it's crazy to think. And I think that that's starting to change. You're starting to see people here where it's just gotten so bad and people are like, all right, we got to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but it ain't going to be what it's been. So that's a little bit.
This is why I say, touching back on the if you want to get in law enforcement, I think now, especially in my area, North Carolina, an average of 65% of positions open for every department. That's an average in North Carolina. It's 65. It's over 50% low on their employment.
Shoot, I'm gonna have to come down there.
I told you, man. If you came to North Carolina, I'm hiring you. I told you that.
Hey, say less. Don't think I won't show up down there.
I've already told you. If you come to North Carolina, I'm running your back. I got to run your background.
Yeah, you got to run the background.
And I'm telling you, you got a job. I'm telling you, there's no age limit, no age restriction. As long as you can pass the BLET and the physical exam, bro, you good.
I got you.
You got a job, man. I told you that.
Well, let's end it there. That's a positive note. And I appreciate you coming on to the show. This was great. I think that having your perspective, man, we need you back out here. I know you're busy. I get it. But, you have lived on both sides of the fence. You have so much experience on both sides. And, every day we're getting younger and younger cats that are coming into the profession. My biggest concern, Diesel, is that I see these cats out here. I listen to them. I talk to them. And I cannot believe that I'm the mature adult, because I am not that guy. I've got my own problems and issues. But when I talk to these cats, their outlook combined with the lack of training from the state level, combined with the lack of training from the company level, it's so terrifying, man. I'm just like, every day I worry that I'm going to hear gunshots and then have to deal with the fallout of it. You know what I mean? So, your perspective is well needed, and you've been a great mentor to Hall. He's doing amazing things and putting out good content, and I'm doing my best to try and keep up with you guys. So as much as you can, man, we need you to at least come on here and talk to these cats,
Hey, yeah, man, listen, like I said, man, we could do one Sunday a month if you want to, bro.
You got it.
I'm here for it, bro. I'm gonna try to get back on YouTube, but right now it's just, like I said, I'm still 50%.
I know.
Like I still got a bunch of positions open, and my department is so young. I'm the only field training officer, so I have to train all the new guys that's come out, and the ones that I can't train have to ride with the rookies until I can get to them. So it's been a journey, man. But I'm here for it.
All right, man. Well, hey, everybody, let's say thank you in the comments. We're gonna pull off of the screen here. We'll have 1 minute of overtime for you guys to say your thank yous to the chief and let him know how much we appreciate him being here. I want to thank you guys for all being a part of the stream tonight. As always, go to work tomorrow, do your absolute best job in what you do. Keep your head on a swivel. Guys, please watch your six, be safe, and as always, you know the deal. I want you guys to be great. Hit that like, share, subscribe, the whole thing. All right, y'all be good.
I'm gonna go in. I run it up in the right kind of what? Nigga, shit so fucking hard, yeah. What? Sad, I be swerving and the fan got me serving.